Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this show that, well, just makes you smile. Only from the Sports Box Network. I am Hamilton Mike Letta, along with Brian, the Ranger Retard, Mike Velarde, and Aunt Morella. And this is our little hockey show that we put together for you to, have a good time tonight, talk a little sports. I know a lot of people out there are missing sports, but we got a great guest on tonight. We're going to get to him in a second, but first, Brian Retard, the Ranger, is going to give you a little rundown.
Absolutely, guys. Welcome to the show tonight. Listen, we know we haven't seen enough hockey in our lives in way too long. We have a very special guest tonight coming on. We just want to give a quick shout out to CrowdPlay. It's an app that we recently building a relationship with. It's really fantastic. You're able to download it. You're able to watch virtual games until the games get back in real life, and you're able to win cash and prizes from trivia, guessing which way the game goes. It's awesome. Totally free. Use our promo code at startup, which is the box, and you get 10 free points to get started because we want you to have a leg up on the competition. So check that out. It's get.crowdplayapp.com. It's in the Apple App Store, Google App Market. Check it out. It's fantastic.
Yep. Great. Joining up with CrowdPlay should be a good partnership. And of course, we're fun guys, so they're going to love us. So to get to our special guest, if you're all wondering out there, our special guest tonight is a former producer and current host for 97.5 The Fanatic talk show radio and sports talk radio in Philadelphia. He is the host of Flyers Daily and Flyers Fix. Both are on Apple Podcasts. He is a hockey guru and a fellow goaltender. Let's bring him onto the show, Jason Myrtetus. Jason.
Wait, who's the other goaltender? Is that you,
me.
Mike? Ah,
Mike the Iceman. That is me, yes.
Yeah, well, put a mask on that face.
He does look better with it, huh?
Don't worry, I got a couple here for you could borrow. I got a few masks.
Yeah, no, I'll use a cage. That's fine. Spoken like a true Flyers fan, Jason.
Yeah, right? You're going to go helmet and cage?
Oh, yeah, helmet and the cage. Got it all painted and everything. I'll have to bring it on for you if I can get a break out of here. So,
are you wearing like a Cooper helmet?
No, it is a
Windwell?
What is it? I think it's a Brian's mask, actually, because I wear Brian's equipment. I think it's a Brian's mask.
Oh, so it is a mask. It's not a helmet and cage, though.
Yes, okay. mask with the cage. Yeah, old school. I was old school with the Cooper and the cage, like Pete Peters, but not anymore. Yeah, I upgraded.
To his credit, I don't want to pump him up too much, but the game that I went to, who's in a charity game for WCRE at the Flyers Skate Zone, not half bad. He exceeded my expectations. Little glove action, more than I thought.
Yep.
I was impressed.
That's awesome.
And then on the flip side of that, John Leclerc almost broke my finger with a shot last year. So, it is what it is. We get older. We get,
I played in a charity game against Leclerc, and he was on my team, and he almost knocked my legs out from under me in warm up.
Oh, he should bring it. Him and Fedor can bring it. So yeah, they definitely are good.
Yeah, no doubt.
So Jason, let's get to we're talking. We're going to talk some Flyers. We're going to talk a little bit about the NHL. Just here and there about stuff. I know you're a big hockey guy, so that's why we wanted to have you on. I'm going to start with something that was on the mind of me when it happened early in the season. Is the Kevin Hayes move. Me and Brian had talked about this on a show we had that I thought at the time he was well overpaid. The Flyers get themselves into long-term deals, and they had to stop doing that. And here's another long-term deal with Kevin Hayes. He has a good season up until the lockout. So, I mean, what do you think of his progress so far and for the future with Kevin Hayes?
Yeah, when they signed him to the deal, I was with you because I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, this is a little more expensive than I would have preferred to go, Mike, and a little bit longer than I would have preferred to go. But the NHL is like every other sport. If you're going to try and build your team through free agency, you're going to be screwed because it's silly season. You overpay, and you can't build a team that way because in those sports, 3 of the 4 sports, you're capped. So Hayes signs the deal. I mean, it was a big one. It's $50 million over 7 years. I would have loved to have gone, $38 million over 5 years. But you got to pay a price especially when you have a need, and especially when Chuck Fletcher got aggressive and traded for his rights from Winnipeg because he went there last year for a first-round pick. So the fact that he paid for his rights, he tipped his hand. He tipped his hand to what he needed. They knew, why they needed him because they wanted to put Nolan Patrick in a more advantageous position as the third line pivot. But what Hayes, I mean, you look at his numbers, the numbers aren't eye-popping, and especially for that kind of money. I mean, this year, I think, 23 goals, 18 assists, 41 points. That's about where he's been for his high point for his career when you extrapolate that over a full 82. But what he brings is a lot of help on the penalty kill, gives you depth on the power play, and maybe just as big as that, and it's not even on the ice. It's the presence in the locker room, on the plane rides. I mean, guy, the best way to put it for him, and I love the guy, I don't think he'd take offense to this, but he's a masshole. You know, one of those guys that's louder than hell. You always know when Kevin Hayes is in the room. And he takes a lot of pressure off guys by being a huge personality. Not to mention, like I talked to Robert Haig today, and he's in Sweden, and I asked him about, they have a text exchange, and he said, yeah, I don't even really reply because it's just hazy nonstop. Like sending gifts, he's like a big 12-year-old kid. So, that personality is something that this team needs. It keeps them loose, and it's good for everybody involved.
Cool.
The problem that I had with this signing was not so much the player. I mean, I know the player very well. I saw him come up in the NHL. He's not a bad player at all. But I felt that the way the team was structured, especially down the middle, you had Couturier at 1, and that was very clear. You kind of assumed, and again, some injuries played into it, that Nolan Patrick would be the 2 long-term, Frost would come up and be the 3 long-term, and then Lawton would take over that 4 spot. And I think when you bring a guy like that in at that expense for that term, it's going to be there for a while. Do you feel as though, and I know we're going to moving forward into next season because Patrick has lost this whole year, and obviously that's unfortunate. Hope he comes around from it. Does Hayes' presence stunt Frost, or are they going to find a place for Frost on the wing because they're just really deep at center?
Yeah, it's a good question because Frost is a natural center. But a lot of guys are natural centers that just because of situation or whatever it might be, that they end up being a winger at the NHL, at least for a period of time. You're right. The commitment to Hayes is pretty long, 7 years. And Nolan Patrick's a young player who's an RFA, and they're going to have to sign him, and that's going to be an interesting contract. You got to go bridge deal there, considering the guys have played a shift this entire year. But that being said, you can move Patrick to the wing. I think he's more suited to be a center than Frost. I think he's a higher pedigree player than Frost, too. Plus, you bring a young player in the league, you like to take responsibility off them, and putting him on the wing will take some responsibility of the 200 by 85 off him. It'll take a little bit of space, areas that he doesn't need to go quite as low in the defensive zone. It's a little less on his plate. So he can slowly adjust to the NHL, and then maybe he moves into a center position sometime down the line. You're always going to have injuries too, so you can move him into the middle. Having that versatility is always a good thing. You're better off always having too many centers and having centers playing wing than having too many wings and not enough centers.
Sure.
So to me, it's the third most important position in the sport, goalie being number 1, of course. And then, having legit top 4D, and D and center to me are just interchangeable. You got to be big up the middle, skilled up the middle, and they are with the 3 centers they have when Nolan Patrick's healthy, especially.
Jason, question for you. What is happening with Shane Gostisbehere? Yeah. Why is he falling out of favor?
Well, I don't know that is he falling out of favor? Whose favor?
Apparently
is the question.
AV.
Well, he was hurt, and they did healthy scratch him, and when he came back initially, he sat a bunch of games because the team was winning. No coach likes to make changes in the lineup when your team is just bombing people, and that's what the Flyers were doing. And it's odd because he gets back in there for one game, right? And they got a 9-game win streak, and they lose it against Boston, and then all of a sudden you go on this pause, and we haven't seen a game since March 10th. I thought he played really well in that Boston game. It's something that I've been really vocal about since his second year in the league. I caught a lot of criticism for it. I thought people were kind of overvaluing his position or stature as a player. And people were like, well, they were kind of making him out to be things that I didn't think he was. I never thought he was a great skater. He's not tremendously fast. He's a dramatic player is the way I kind of put it. And he makes dramatic plays and big plays when he's playing well and confident. But you can see his body language tells you he's not a confident player. And he hasn't been. He's been he's been hampered by a few injuries, and those can be tough. He was dealing with the knee. He was dealing with a core injury a couple of years ago. So those are tough things to shrug off. And I think the league adjusted to him. And now the professional athletes got to readjust. And I think he's had a little bit of a hard time doing that, both by his play, his confidence, and I don't think that he's had a coaching staff prior to this year that he felt real comfortable with since early on in his tenure with the Flyers.
Well, after his 17 goal, after his rookie season, the guy above you in the box, Brian's been calling for his trade. I think pretty much he's been wanting to be traded. He felt his stock was that high.
What I had felt was that he kind of came out of nowhere that rookie year. Phenomenal year. I'm taking nothing away from the kid, but I think he played above who he really is as a player in that year. So I felt if you were ever going to sell high, and I'm a stock guy. I work in investments, so I kind of view things through that lens. That was a sell high moment for me, and I think.
So you would have traded him after his rookie year?
I would have sold very high because I didn't.
You can't do that.
No.
You see, the reason why you can't do that, Brian, is simple. The fan base fell in love with this guy that was scoring overtime winners, would bring in this new dynamic. Why this team is in some sort of rebuild, but we're not going to call it a rebuild. He was exciting. He was all those things, and all of a sudden you're going to trade that guy. Fans are never going to understand that.
I agree. I would agree with that. Yes,
especially when you consider how many guys the Flyers traded too early. I mean, thank God they didn't trade Sean Couturier because the fan base all wanted him traded too. They didn't understand.
Yeah, I've been on that wagon for a while to get Couturier out of here, but I mean, he's coming to his own. But I thought maybe 3 years you can get top value for him. So,
yeah, I mean, to me, he's got a top 3 best value contract in the entire NHL.
Yeah.
And you ask other guys in the league, like we use our eyeballs, and we look, all of us, we know what we're looking at. We know when a guy looks like shit, when a guy looks good, when a guy's a good player, or a guy's just on a heater, right? He's just playing out of his mind, but that's not the player he is. Couturier is such an understated talent. The way he's so economical in his movements, he doesn't waste movements. Mm-hmm. He's in the right spot all the time. His hockey IQ is through the roof. And like we know what he's looking. Okay, he looks like a good player. But go ask guys that play against him, guys that play against him in the league. Boy, you will not get a raver review about a player in the league other than maybe Crosby, because Crosby doesn't lose a board battle, right? He does everything right. But Couturier is one of those guys that has the respect of the guys he plays against at an extremely high level. And I've talked to all these coaches too, and I asked myself, who's the one player that when you got here, you knew he's a decent player, but you didn't really know how good he was. And they all cite him. I mean, there's a line outside of AV's door when he's juggling lines. Everybody's going, put me on his wing. I mean, Jesus, Mike, you could skate you're a goalie, and you could skate the wing on that line, and you could be a +2.
Hey,
now, you may not get an apple or a goal,
I get skate pretty well with the pads on, Jason.
Yeah, that's always a bitch. Especially back in the day when they were leather and they get with horsehair. They get wet.
I hear you, the Coopers. Yep.
Oh,
yep.
God, yeah.
You brought up Vigneault and the line changes. Again, I lived through that for a number of years as a Rangers fan. The stigma that he got in New York was that he really, he wasn't a coach that you'd want around younger players. I can point to a lot of situations where, he sat the younger player, maybe the better player, because he wanted to rely on his vets. Really to a fault. The playoff series against Montreal, his affinity for Mark Stahl and Nick Holden almost cost them that series. So it seems that he's taken a big turn here in Philadelphia. Now, is that because this is what the Flyers are, or because he's actually changed, in your opinion, his use of younger players?
It's a great question, because you got to look at every situation on its own value and its own face. So when he was in New York, that was a team that was being led by veterans, and coaches in the most important times in games and most important times in a season want to put the guys that they trust the most in the positions to determine the outcome. So that's, look, I'm speaking for him. I don't know if he would say the same thing or not, but I know that's a coach's mentality. And it's a fan lament a lot of times because we want to see young youth and we want to see it develop. But the coach has to go with his gut on what, see, I look at players in the NHL, young players especially, and they're like, for lack of a better term, they're bipolar. They're manic depressive. Like the highs are really high and the lows are really low, and they swing in between both. Sometimes a coach wants a player, he doesn't care that his ceiling's not that high, so he'll bring that down, but he'll bring the floor up to here. So the swings are only this because it's the known commodity.
Sure.
But with the Flyers, you're right. It is a younger team. It's more predicated on youth. It's gone through what is a pretty pronounced rebuild at this point, even though they never called it that. And And you're seeing players through coaching as well, guys like Konechny, who found himself in the Dave Haxtell years too many times on the wrong side of the puck, defensively, flying the zone when he shouldn't have been. They fixed those things, and now you see guys like Konechny in the final 90 seconds of a one-goal lead game. He's out there, not to provide offense, but to solidify a win if Couturier is not out there or he's on Couturier's line. But that being said, plus I think he has, AV's not a fool. He sees what's going on in this league, and it's a young man's game. I mean, look at the league now. It is younger than ever. Guys that are 21 years old, barely got hair on their pecker, are getting paid $10 million a year, right? Yeah. These kids aren't even shaving, and they have that kind of money. So, I look at that, and he's not oblivious to that. The game is so fast, so skilled, so creative, and younger players tend to have that right now.
Yeah. So, Jason, we've had, you might not know this, but we've had some back and forth on Twitter and some good dialogue, so I appreciate it as always. But
what's your Twitter handle?
I changed it, but it was Aunt Morella.
Why did you change it? Did I block you?
No, you did not. Your buddy Missinelli did, though.
Missinelli did.
Oh, shocking.
Yeah, right.
Jesus.
So,
I'm Republican. What?
Basically what happened, actually, yes.
That's basically exactly what happened. On my birthday and everything. So, real nice guy.
That's a violation on him.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had some conversation, and during the so-called rebuild you just mentioned, I was more of an advocate to trade one of Giroux or Voracek. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it didn't happen. The reason behind that, obviously, being just the contracts, what you could probably get for them in return to try to and basically speed up this process to get us back to contending again. But obviously, they look like to be contenders now. So I guess where I'm coming from is back then you didn't see it, but do you kind of get where I was coming from, where maybe one of those guys, probably more Voracek, wouldn't necessarily make or break this team moving forward? And you probably could have got a decent haul for him.
I don't think you could have got a decent haul for him because of the contract.
Okay.
Yeah, look, he makes 8.25, I think. I want to say. He's on a big ticket, and he's got a lot of years. So first of all, when you're trying to trade a guy like that,
9.25.
There's only a few. What is it?
9.25 this year.
Well, yeah. His AAV though is his AAV is 8.25.
Makes a lot.
Yeah, I can't remember real dollars, but the thing is, first of all, when you're trying to trade a guy like that, not many teams can take a player with a cap hit that large.
That's true.
Because if you're trading for a guy that you want to put you over the top, then you're a team that's probably pretty close to contending. So you don't have the cap space for a guy like that. So you're limited in the amount of teams you can go to. And then you couple that, well, I'm going to give you this huge cap hit and term on a guy that I'm getting rid of, because I want to dump this cap space so I can get younger. And that team's going, well, young players are cheaper for the most part.
Yeah.
And in today's NHL, especially in the last couple of years, the youth movement has been on. So, you can get guys coming out of their entry-level contract that are RFAs, controllable, and for a lot better price than that. Look, I was a guy, when they got their ass blown off against Pittsburgh in Game 6 at the Wells Fargo Center, when they got beat by Pittsburgh 2 years prior and, the Caps the 2 years before that. I was frustrated too, and I said, nothing's off the table. Although the captain's off the table because it's a non-starter. Same situation with him. Not a lot of teams can fit it. He's a 30-plus-year-old player. There's a lot of factors in there. Not to mention, he has a full no move, no trade clause.
Right.
And he's expressed it. I don't know if he's ever expressed it publicly, in print or anything, but he's expressed it to me that he does not want to leave. He's not going to waive it.
Okay.
So that's a non-starter and non-conversation. I get where you were coming from in regards to Voracek, because I could spread that money out over a lot of other areas. But he's a guy that you don't realize how good he is until he's on a good team, too.
You're probably right.
Yeah, I think the coaching's made a big change in him, too, because you saw in the beginning of the year, AV put him in the doghouse a couple of times. He's on the third line, put him on the fourth line in games. It was like, whoa, 8.25 mil. And this dude's on the third line, fourth line. And it was a wake-up. Jake Voracek was a guy who would get in he's very creative. So, and a European, so he grew up playing on a bigger ice. So you get in the zone, and you get to the top of the circle, and you curl at the hat on the wall, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times in those bigger rinks and in those leagues, you can push the puck back to your point there. AV's going, no. That's an area where if you're not below the top of the circle, you're not going backwards. Go forwards. You know what I mean? And he was making those mistakes. You see the turnovers, and they go the other way. So he's cleaned a lot of that up. You see his he's got an elite skill. He's not a scorer. He's an elite playmaker, and he's a great skater, which also portends well. He's 30 years old now. That portends well. He hasn't lost a step in his skating at all.
Yeah, no, we haven't.
So you'll get good value on that, and I'm glad they didn't trade him too. I mean, I think one of the things that people a couple things they don't realize about him. He's a big presence in that locker room. He's a big leader for the team. But beyond that, there's nobody on the team, and I don't know if any of you guys know this, but and I've said it a few times. There's nobody on the team that does more charity work than he does. Nobody. There's wounded warriors in that locker room where I work every night that he's brought down to the game. There's kids with disabilities, families with all kinds of issues or sicknesses. Every game he's got people there and does charity work and goes in, win or loss, and is great to everybody. And the thing about it, the reason why you know it's genuine is because you never hear him talk about it. It's never publicized. Sure. He doesn't want to publicize. I publicize. I should be his freaking publicist. But he doesn't want the publicity from it, so he's doing it from the right area.
Nice. Yeah, I've met him a few times. He's always very, very nice person.
Yeah, he's an untapped riot too. Like,
oh yeah,
yeah. I think people are starting to figure it out.
So they would come over to the golf course I was working at years ago, and they would play, and they were hilarious. Always in the pro shop where I was working.
Yep.
But very, very nice people.
Yep, absolutely.
Jason, I want you to settle a dispute that we've had for a couple of years within our little group of friends here. You think back to the Braden Shen trade, right?
Oh boy!
Wait, which one?
The one that
they got him or they gave him away?
Gave him away.
The Blues.
Okay.
So my read on that, and again, from the outside looking in, I live in South Jersey. I'm a Rangers fan, but I follow the team, so I know what's going on. It always felt to me that Hextall was trying to rebuild, like you said. They didn't call it a rebuild, but that's really what it was. And he may have tried to move the Giroux, the Voraceks, the Simmons at the time, and like ownership didn't really want to do that for kind of the reasons you explained about Gostisbehere. They kind of acquiesced on Shen. It's my opinion that they won the Shen deal hands down. I didn't think Braden Shen was worth 2 first-round picks at that juncture in his career. And there are those who will say that the Blues got the better end of the deal because, well, hey, they won the Stanley Cup. I think the Flyers did extremely well in that deal. So I lean and think that they got one over on the Blues.
Yeah, I mean, look, you got to look at it from two different lenses. You got to look at it from the lens of St. Louis, and yeah, they got a cup. So they're going, man, we won the trade. He played a big pivotal role in that, was a big body. That's the kind of guy you need in the playoffs to be physical, set tone that way. And when Braden Shen's banging, that's when you know he's on his game. Going back to when he was a Flyer as well. Look, sometimes there's not a winner and a loser in a trade. Teams are in different places in their ability to compete for a cup. The Flyers were not in a position to do that. They were in a position to bring in more young talent. They also saw on the horizon that Shen needed a new deal and that they were going to have to pay him. Did they want to commit to that, or did they want to get younger in the NHL as they were becoming an aging team? So I think both teams did really well in the deal because you're right. You look at the players that they got, and I know people look and they go, oh, look, the Shen's winning the cup and Yuri Laterra is on the Flyers. It's like, dude, if you are going to throw that out there, you're too dumb for me to even argue with because that's obviously just a salary dump by St. Louis as part of that. And the real teeth of that deal was what you saw in the draft. And yeah, I think that Hextall did well in it. Mm-hmm. I think that Doug Armstrong in St. Louis did really well in it. And I think both teams, certainly got a good deal for where they are at the current time when the deal was made and where they're going, because St. Louis is a team that should they pick it up again this year, they could go back to back. That team is legit. Yeah. So
he's like a drug lord. We got a drug lord in the trade. We're good.
Yeah,
Yuri Laterra.
Yeah, that was an interesting situation.
I got a question for you. So with the year that they were having, Brian is very against. I know I keep throwing Brian under the bus here, but he is a Rangers fan.
Throw him
Rangers
on
fan. Throw him on the bus all day long.
Fine.
He is a Rangers fan, and he deserves it. Pretty much, he's under the impression that if the Flyers got to the playoffs, they're losing in the first round to whoever they play.
That's not what I said.
Am I
That's not what I
correct though?
said. They beat the Islanders. I said they don't match up that well in a playoff series with the Caps, and I think the Penguins in a playoff series like they have before, they're still the Penguins. They have better upper end talent. I would lean that way, for me.
All right, but the way that they were playing before the season was shut down, how do you think that they fare if they get in? Well, when they get into the playoffs.
Well, I'm going to say this, and you guys probably aren't going to like it, but Brian's not wrong.
He's not wrong.
Yeah,
but
because look, if I'm being really objective here, and I'll try to be, I mean, obviously, I would want them to win because I cover the team. I work for the team, and I want to work as much as possible. Money.
Yeah.
Number one. And plus, it creates more awareness in the town for the sport, and people get excited, and that's obviously good. And it's something I try and do is, fly the flag. But look, until you beat the Penguins, they're the favorite. You know what I mean? They just are. And as long as they have Sidney Crosby and Malkin and Chris Letang, and who knows if, when they come back now, will they have Gensel? That's a big difference, So they didn't have Gensel, had it gone without a pause, so that maybe would have affected things. But I'm a believer. My philosophy is I got to see it first to really believe it. Are they a better team than they were the other two that lost to the Penguins in the last couple of years? Absolutely. The Flyers are way better equipped from the crease out, right, at every turn. Mm-hmm. The goaltending's better, better depth of goaltending. The defense is far better. Matt Niskanen, former Penguin, former Capital, has been a huge addition. Justin Braun as well. Phil Myers and Travis Sanheim, the chemistry they have together, it was something I didn't expect this year with the way those two skate and cover the ice. So, and then obviously you look up front and you see what you see. But that being said, if I was handicapping, if there was a few teams as they were coming down the stretch that I said I would prefer to get, one of them was the Islanders. Even though the Islanders got the better of them in the regular season, I just sense there's problems on the island. When I see Barzal getting benched for a third period, I see that team that's giving up huge leads under Barry Trotz, which never happens. So that was a team that I agree with Brian there too, that I would have preferred a matchup against, but home ice would have been a factor. Flyers are 25-6-4 at home, or 26-5-4, I think, at home this year. I mean, that's pronounced. That's ridiculous, but that would have been a factor. But we'll have to see what happens now if it's neutral sites or whatever, and how that plays out.
So I've just felt the Islanders have been smoke and mirrors the last couple of years. I really have. That's why I said, I mean, depending who they play, they can't score goals. So if they're going to go into Philly when the goaltending is that good in that building, that's not a game that they're going to be really equipped to win. So
yeah, well, the one thing is, like in the playoffs in the NHL, it's kind of like, the NBA in the postseason becomes a half-court game, and the NHL, it's those grind out 2-1, 1-0 games and stuff, and they are built for that. So and they do have some elite talent, and they made the trade for JG Pajot, which I think was a pretty good addition for them, gives them good center depth, and then they extended them, and then Barzal is a tremendous player. Their goaltending, I think, is okay. I don't think it's great. I think it's more of a product of environment. I mean, you go to the Doug Weight year 2 years ago, and they were the 31st ranked team in goals allowed. They allowed the most goals in the NHL. Barry Trotz comes in year one. That year prior, Thomas Greiss couldn't stop a beach ball from the blue line. He was horrible. Then he comes in the next year, and it's him and Robin Lehner, and they have the lowest goals against average tandem in the NHL. They shaved 102 goals off year to year. Barry Trotz shaved that 102 goals off year to year, but that comes at a cost. They protect the house. They protect their net and their area, and they counter rush to get scoring opportunities, but they don't take risks. So how that would play out, who knows?
So, Jason, I'll preface this question by saying, growing up, I was a huge Hextall fan. Actually, Pelle Lindbergh first, but then I became a Hextall fan. Played like him, loved the guy to death, loved what he did, loved everything about him. So with that, as a GM, when Hextall came here, I was in love with the move because I thought he did a great job in L.A. Took a little longer than probably a lot of people thought it was going to do because, he's got to do it his way. Do you think Hextall, in the path he was going, was on the right track and needed more time, or were the Flyers right for moving on from him and saying, listen, we got to get this show on the road now. We got to blow Hextall out of here and move on.
Well, I don't know that it was we got to get the show on the road and move on was really the thing. And a lot of people like to point that he didn't call Carter Hart up and say that that was the rift that led to his firing. It was shocking he was fired because usually a coach always goes before the GM in season, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And if people go, well, he wouldn't fire Dave Haxtell, so that's why he got fired. Well, then Haxtell would have been fired the same week, right? Yep. So that's not the reason. And it wasn't because of Hart, because if you talk to Carter Hart, he'll tell you he wasn't ready. I mean, the guy didn't know how to pay his electric bill. His electric got turned off. He never lived on his own. He didn't know that he had to go buy a bed. You know, he lived with a billet family. You know, all these things are taken care of, right. You know, and he was just getting acclimated to being an adult at 20 years old with all these expectations on him. His game and his camp wasn't very good in his rookie year. And then his game wasn't really good in Allentown. But then when you're starting to go all these goalies deep, and you ended up going 8 deep that year, then you had to bring him up. And he played well. So, but no, I think with Hextall, it was more of a culture thing behind the scenes. I think the environment became a little controlling and a little tense. And I think Ron would probably tell you that now. But that he made some mistakes in that way. He alienated the alumni a little bit, and Flyers alumni is very important. So it's just some things that, you know, people didn't, you know, really take too well to. And maybe it got a little bit more pronounced year after year. When I say maybe, I mean I know. So, you know, there's a little bit of worrying about some things that didn't need to be worried about.
Okay. I got a question for you, Jason. So, speaking of Hextall, I don't think his free agent signings were very good. His trades were spectacular, I thought, and I thought he drafted pretty well. Do you think he was the driving force behind some of those free agent signings, or do you think it was more management saying, yeah, we got to spend some money to get some household names in here? Not that they really did, but they did.
Well, who are you referring to? So, just so we're...
Well...
JVR, I'm assuming.
Yeah, JVR was one of them, but even guys like Dale Weiss, I mean, they threw some serious money or not serious, but decent money at some guys that were just, you know, okay signings. Yeah,
well, yeah, like Weiss is one of those guys. It's pretty easy. You know, what they were looking for with Dale Weiss, like, I get the intent. You needed a little bit of protection. You needed a little bit of sandpaper. You wanted a guy to kill penalties, but the league was changing really rapidly, and it was leaving guys like Dale Weiss in the rearview mirror really fast. Yeah. There are other guys, too, that were even higher pedigree players than Dale Weiss that got left in the rearview. Guys like Milan Lucic, guys like, well, James Neal prior to this year, guys like, you know, you look all across the league, there's guys that played that game that all of a sudden can't play anymore. David Backes. Was a high-end player. And all of a sudden, I mean, you look just a couple of years ago, Lucic signed a 7x7. You know? I mean, that's a serious deal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, not everybody saw it right away and saw that the league was going to this speed and skill game. And, you know, guys like Dale Weiss, guys like Lucic, they don't have a half a step to lose. You know, really fast players, they have a half a step they can lose, and they'll still be fine. And then there's elite players that even when they lose a half a step, they think the game and they can compensate for it in other ways. Supremely high IQ guys. Weiss isn't that. He's a worker bee. Yeah. And David Backes is like that. When those guys lose a step, man, it changes everything.
Didn't Hextall sign McDonald?
That was Holmgren.
Oh, Holmgren. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, God, that was so bad.
That was like...
Yeah, that's a bit of a head scratcher. Yeah. Like, it's a shame too. Like there's always a guy, right, that on every team that just gets paid way too much money.
Oh, he was it.
Yeah, and like he becomes.
How much time you got? I got a list of them. How much time you got?
Yeah, well, there's always the guy that just catches the brunt of the fan base, and when your team hasn't won a playoff series since 2012, it's even more pronounced. And like it could have been a nicer guy, like Andrew McDonald. Andrew McDonald was a really nice, like good, like genuine guy. You know, married man, family man, and everything. And boy, he got the wrath for getting.
But you know what
do people want him to do? Say, I'm not worth the $5 million a year. Give me that 3.2.
But to me, it was he signed the deal and then he lost his feet. He just got terrible in a heartbeat. I don't know what happened to him.
Well,
he was playing for the Phantoms. He was playing for the Phantoms for $5 million.
Well,
Well, I wouldn't pay him for $5 million.
No, yeah.
But no, I mean, the thing is with him is he came in and he had that they traded for him, and then he had that real good run at the end of that season, led the league in block shots, and he looked like a pretty good player. It was still an overpayment and too much term for not enough of a resume, but yeah, I mean, look, the intent is always good when you're trying to bolster your D, but it's not always the right guy, and that wasn't the right deal for that guy at that time. And the money was too much. I mean, I don't begrudge Andrew McDonald for accepting the deal, but
good for him.
a hell of an agent.
Yeah.
Jason, I wanted to ask you, do you think that Homer took a little bit of the fall too at the end with Ed Snyder? And, Ed Snyder calling a little bit of the shots with the Brzgalov thing, kind of, with that whole thing.
Yeah, well, the old man made that signing.
well, we know that. And then, obviously that didn't work out too well.
No.
Well, yeah, like Homer gets the bag for Bobrovsky, right? Because they traded him because they signed Brzgalov to that deal. And Bob was like, I'm not going to re-sign here after my initial deal's up. I'm a UFA. Why would I sign here? You just signed a dude to a 7-year deal.
Yep.
Well, we know that didn't work out too well.
No. I mean, well, look, Bob's
two
had some...
Vezinas later?
Yeah, but no playoff success. But, I mean, that's how I really measure a player. I mean, he's a good player, and look, he had a real good career in Columbus, especially with Tortorella. But then again, and Mike will tell you this, as a goalie, you got to look at environment. You got to look at the environment a goalie is in and then weigh that against how they're playing. Now, he's a spectacular, athletic goaltender. He's good in international play, too. So I'm not saying he's not a good goalie. But like the example I used before with Thomas Greiss and Halak on the island, those two looked awful that year. But then all of a sudden, Halak goes to Boston.
And he's reborn again. Yep.
Yeah, that's because the environment. Like Robin Lehner, who played with the Islanders last year and had terrific numbers, elite numbers, said that he's played better this season in Chicago than he did last year with the Islanders. These are his words from an interview we did on In Goal magazine, their podcast, In Goal Radio. And the difference is that playing for the Blackhawks is far more difficult than it was playing for Barry Trotz and the New York Islanders. So you have to consider environment. So look at Bob this year in Florida. What's going on there? Is he the same Bob, or is the environment far different than a team that's led by John Tortorella that says, if you don't block a shot, I'm going to duct tape your ass to the bench. Guys got to sell out in every game and tremendous defensive structure. You got to look at that. You got to look at the ability of teams to limit the cross-ice passes across the slot line.
Sometimes the change of scenery hurts, especially with the head cases the goalies are.
Yeah, look, and he went and Florida made no sense. I don't understand why they did what they did in any way, shape, or form, because they signed him to that 7-year deal for $10 million per at $70 million, and then they used their top 15 draft pick and picked Spencer Knight, a goalie.
Yeah.
Look,
actually, Brian, I told you about that. We talked about that too.
Yeah,
silly.
I don't like it then. I don't like it now.
Yeah, that's just dumb to me.
Yeah. So, kind of it's a two-part draft-related question. One, were you surprised that when it came to their pick in the last draft? Now, my team's pick was the easiest pick in the draft. They couldn't screw it up if they wanted to, and trust me, they've screwed it up quite a bit in the past. Easiest pick for them. With a guy like Cole Caulfield staring them in the face, they went with Cam York on defense. When I think their defense long term, it's among the better teams. They're set up very well longer term, more so than other teams. So I guess that to me wasn't. And I know you don't draft for fit in hockey because they don't play for like 4 or 5 years, but I felt it was just. I felt him staring him in the face was kind of like an easy pick for them. But were you also surprised they weren't more aggressive at this year's deadline, given the fact they have a very, very deep prospect system?
All right, 2 questions. Let me take the draft one first in Caulfield. I was a guy that was kind of beating the Caulfield drum too, because I just think that in watching him play for the NTDP and then watching him in World Juniors, I was just convinced that this guy's just an elite level scorer. His size, a lot of years ago, you would have looked at that and said that's going to be a major problem. Today's game, I don't look at it as a problem. Look at guys like Marner and have plenty of success as smaller statured players. But that being said, and I think the reason why they went with Cam York, and I'm trying to remember back, I think it was Brent Flair, and I spoke to him on my Stick to Hockey podcast. You want to stagger how your defensemen come in the league. You know what I mean? Like, you can't have all veterans, you can't have all young guys. They had all these young guys, and they had to bring in a couple veterans. Niskanen's 33, Braun is 34, whatever, right? Like, they're going to move. Braun's probably going to move on this season. Niskanen will probably move on after his contract's over. Maybe they sign him to a short extension, if anything, see where his game is. But you want to stagger how those guys come into the league. So that's part of it. Plus, he's a guy that can quarterback a power play. So I think the shakiness of Gostisbehere in that regard maybe played a role there a little bit. So I think that's why they did that. And they went after basically the diet version of Cole Caulfield in the second round and Bobby Brink, who's an elite level scorer, but he's got a really goofy skating stride that he needs to work out a little bit. I know he has been. But the other part of your question was, I can't remember.
The deadline.
Oh.
He hits you in volume, Jason. So
Yeah.
I had a feeling that they were going to do something that people were not going to like. That they were going to be aggressive to try to make sure that they got in this year because they needed to get in this year. For whatever reason you pick, whether it's they just want playoff games, they want to be back on the radar, they want the revenue, whatever.
So they were going to go short term for
the sugar buzz deal. You know.
Yeah, well, I think that, and I think this was the smart move by Chuck Fletcher, because he realized he knew his team. Like, you got to know your team, and you got to know what I can take away from my team. Because if you're going to make a big addition, you got to take something away because they just didn't have the cap space to just add. Right. So the fact that he looked at his team and said, okay, I want to put myself in a position. I got a couple young guys here that I'm not real sure about. Guys, some third line player or fourth line players that, he was looking at and kind of going, okay, can I rely on these guys in the playoffs on my fourth line? Because that's a difficult thing to do. You got to obey Kubel, and you're fine with that. But there were a couple other guys that I don't think that they felt as comfortable with. So they wanted to bring in some guys that would fill specific roles, and that's why they brought in Derek Grant and Nate Thompson. Now, Nate Thompson gets traded every year at the deadline to a contender because, look, he may not even be in your he could be a healthy scratch, but he gives you great depth. Like, you'd rather have Nate Thompson and Derek Grant over Connor Bunneman. Not to say that Bunneman's not going to be good. He's 21 years old. So, he's a young player. And I think he's even younger than 21, to be honest with you. I mean, you look at some of these younger players and you go, okay, I got to put myself in a position where, again, like back to where we started with the known commodity. I know what Derek Grant is. I know what Nate Thompson is. Is it great? No. But does it help me and give me what I need for a playoff run? That's the big thing. Again, it's that known commodity.
Well, there was whispers about Wayne Simmons coming back. You were hearing
names
names
that was silly.
Yeah, they were hearing names like that at the deadline. So,
but even more silly than that is the fact that Simmons went to Buffalo.
Right, I was like, what? Yeah, I think he wants to re-sign him there.
Yeah, well, I think. Yeah, I did a little digging on this. I'm going, why does this? Okay, something just doesn't make sense here. So I had to figure it out. He's got a pregnant wife, and she lives right across the border. So he wanted to be closer to her. Buffalo brought him in, and I talked to somebody pretty close to the situation there. They needed help in that locker room for Jack Eichel. They need somebody in there to bring that group together, have some accountability, because they've had these great points in the last two seasons, and then they just fall flat on their face.
They always start off great.
Yeah, and you don't want to fire another coach, right?
Yeah.
I think you got to go in Ralph Kruger there. And the players love him, and I think he's got a good system, and he's a smart man. So I think he was brought in for that, and I think he will extend there as well. But, I mean, his career is coming down. He's another one of those guys, got to go full circle here again, is that he can't afford to lose half a step. Those power forwards can't. He's not a Fanatic. He was never a great skater. He got a lot better, but he was never a great skater, Wayne Simmons. But that being said, great guy, though. Tremendous. Just one of the I've covered the team a long time, and he's as stand-up as any other guy that I've covered in my time covering him.
Jason, you mentioned Justin Braun. What did you think about that trade when it originally happened?
Second round pick, right?
It was.
Yeah, didn't love it.
No. He's making $3.5 million.
Yeah, didn't love it. Understood. Again, like I understand the theory behind it, bringing in some veteran D, especially when you got a young D core. But didn't love it. Still don't love it. Right. But I can't deny that. The addition of Niskanen and Braun has been a huge factor because it has. adding those veteran guys. Like, again, I and you'll hear tomorrow on Flyers Daily tomorrow, I had my conversation with Robert Haig, and he was ended up being partners with Braun for basically the second half of the season. They showed tremendous chemistry. He's one of those guys that, again, veteran, just you know what you're going to get out of him. He's a pro. Played on some good teams out in San Jose. Went to a Cup. So it's not like he comes in with a little bit of cachet as a guy that can to help that young D kind of learn how to be a professional every day. Because D, there's just not a lot of margin for error. You got to be really consistent. And when you're not, back to Gossespierre, that's when you have this yo-yo yin and yang player. And, you want the yin, but you get the yang.
Yeah.
So Jason, going back to JVR, when JVR went up to Toronto, I think they thought he was going to be more of a player up there in the way of giving him, not the reins, but just giving him more of a thing for the team. And when he struggled up there and he came back to Philly, I think he's better in Philly now because he's not the man. He's kind of like a secondary guy, or maybe like a third or fourth kind of scorer thing. Do you kind of agree with that JVR is in a better situation now than he was when he first was here?
I don't know that look, when he was in Toronto, they were in a rebuild for most of those years, and he still averaged per 82 games. He averaged 30.5 goals per season per 82. So he had some pretty good years there. He missed a lot of games. But that being said, he had 27 last year. I think he's got 19 goals this year. But you're right. He's not the focal point of the team or the offense or anything like that. But he wasn't there. I don't think so either. I mean, in Toronto, every player that wears a Leaf jersey is a focal point, first of all. But second of all, you had Phil Kessel was there for a lot of those years. I mean, he was the guy wearing a bullseye for that media.
He was the guy, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and you had other guys that came along while he was there. So I don't know that he was the total focal point there either, but I think the situation is good for him here. He's only signed a contract with one team in his NHL career, and it's been the Flyers both times. So, I mean, at the end of that contract that he signed with the Flyers, they ended up bringing him back in free agency.
What's your take on what they're talking about with the playoffs? They don't know what they're going to do, obviously, but you hear these rumors of they're going to delay next season, that they're going to do, whether they're going to try to finish out the regular season or not, whether they're going to expand the playoffs to 24 teams or whatnot. Are they going to affect 2 seasons? Or, I don't know, everything you hear is always speculation anyway, but what's your take on the way they should go?
Well, I have the way that they should go, but I just don't know what's going to be possible. That's the big caveat, right? So in a perfect world, they'll come back and players will start reporting next week to practice facilities and start, informal skates. Then early June, maybe like June 7th, say, because they're going to hold the draft on June 5th, in my opinion. After the draft, they'll have a training camp period of about 2 weeks, like 10 days to 14 days. And then they'll finish the 189 remaining games in the NHL regular season at these centralized locations. And there'll be 4 of them. I think one's going to be Edmonton, one's going to be in St. Paul, up in Minnesota, one's going to be in Raleigh, and I think the other one is going to be in, I can't remember off the top of my head, maybe Arizona, something like that. So they'll finish the regular season, and if they finish the regular season, then there's no need to do a 2014 playoff field because you've legitimized your chances, your playoff field of 16, because everybody will have played the same amount of games. Everybody will have basically, taken care of all that business. So I think that's what will happen. I think that's, I got to give, and I've given a lot of credit on my podcast to the NHL, to Gary Bettman, to Bill Daly, the deputy commissioner as well, for being incredibly respectful to the hockey fan base. I know Gary Bettman gets shit on a lot. He really does. There's been a lot of work stoppages and lockouts during his tenure, and has he brought the game to a better place? I think he has since the lost season. I mean, the cap when they came out of that was $38.5 million. It is now $81.5 million, and that is based on revenue. He's going to do well in this next TV package. He's brought another team in. He'll have 32. All that being said, the league's done a tremendous job in being transparent in a couple of things. A, its desire to come back and why. And B, the plans for how they are trying to come back. And we've heard everything from that 2014 playoff field. If they're not able to finish the regular season, and it'd be a play-in situation, which I would be cool with if they can't finish the regular season. They may have to shorten the rounds of the playoffs, like the first 2 rounds be best of 5, and then conference final, and the final would have to be best of 7. I think that's the only way that's legitimate. My guess is that they will have the training camp. They'll start a regular season completion towards the end of June, around June 20th, get done right around the 4th of July. They'll start their playoffs. They'll run to about mid-September, and then they won't start the next year probably until like first week of November. And that it does affect 2 seasons. But that being said, you can stretch a little bit next year into June, still end before the league year ends on June 30th. 1. 2, you can also eliminate your All-Star week, your bye week, and all of those things. And you're also move that date a little bit further along so that it's more likely when you're playing those regular season games, you're playing them in home buildings in front of fans. Because the NHL is a gate-driven league.
Right.
When the Toronto Maple Leafs host a home game, regular season home game, it's $2 million real dollars per game. That's, I mean, look, the Leafs are a really rich organization, but that's real money.
Yeah.
And they won't play with fans, I don't think, this summer. And for the completion of this season, I think that the playoffs could be in home buildings after the centralized locations to finish the regular season, but I don't think it'll be with fans. And if it is, it would be very limited fans.
Yeah, it's going to be weird. Just weird generally. It's just,
absurd times, though, call for absurd measures, you know, and that's what it is. And like, I don't understand. I hear some people like saying, well, if they're going to do that, they're not going to have fans. And I just rather just bring it back next year. Well, dude, if you're a hockey fan, don't you just want more hockey? Like, I don't. Like, I want fans there, but I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic, the worst pandemic in 100 years. I don't give a shit. I just want to watch the game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You
Jason,
know,
it'd
be neat.
To quickly piggyback off your Bettman comment, real quick. I'm sorry, Ant. The 2 things I think Bettman went really wrong in is bringing a team back to Atlanta, where the Flames didn't work out the first time, and you bring another team back, and the Thrashers who end up leaving again. And then the other thing is having Quebec leave. I know they went out to Colorado, and the Avalanche are who they are, but Quebec needs a team back. I mean, if any city in Canada, I think, should deserve a hockey team, it's Quebec. I mean, then you'd have Montreal, Quebec, and Toronto up there. You'd have Murderers Row up there for Canada. I think that would be, and Ottawa, and I think that would be great.
Well, I agree with you in theory, and I disagree with you on a couple of things. One, I wouldn't have gone back to Atlanta, number one. Like, I think that was foolhardy. Going back to the same city twice, though, isn't always a bad thing. Look, in Colorado, they had the Rockies, and then they brought the Avalanche. And as soon as they got to Colorado, they won a cup, right?
Well, the Flyers
had a loaded team, too.
With Forsberg and Patrick and all those guys. So that helped. But that's a great hockey market now. But the other thing is, and guys, keep this in mind. There's a couple things. The Canadian dollar is not healthy.
Right.
It's not. And I will tell you from talking to players and talking to agents and stuff, that when players put a 6 or 8 or 10 team no trade list, guess who's on that list? Mm-hmm. Every Canadian team.
Didn't stop Johnny Gaudreau.
Johnny Gaudreau was drafted there, and he was under control. Big difference. Yeah. Why do you think so many players go to places like Arizona or to Dallas or to Tampa or Florida, Bob?
Nice and
right?
warm.
No, had nothing to do with warm. It's called sales.
Oh, money too.
Tax.
Yeah.
And the tax you get in Canada, coupled with the dollar. Like, I love ordering shit from Canada. They're like, oh, it's $10, and then I get the bill and it's $7.75. I'm like, this is great. You know, I order my CCM hats off this dude on eBay, and it's like $6. Nice. And it's in my mailbox.
But to that point, Jake, and I bang the drum for this all the time, that the salary cap needs to be tax adjusted, that you shouldn't have teams in Dallas and Tampa and Florida and Vegas and Nashville that they can essentially pay their players more net dollars. Teams like Rangers, the Flyers, Boston, you're going up against it all the time. You know, again, Mark Stone went to Vegas. That's what, 9/8, right? That's a 0 tax deal for him.
Yep.
Shane to Nashville. Like,
that's $12 billion in Toronto.
You can't compete.
Yep.
When when the taxes, if a salary cap is meant to level the playing field, I don't think it effectively does that.
Yeah, you're right. You got to consider that. You're absolutely right. If you want to make it truly fair, but I don't know that the league will ever do that because the Canadian dollar fluctuates.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of different parts of that. But you're right. It's not fair. Like Kucherov re-signing in Tampa was easy for him because he goes, I'll sign this deal, and my take home is still more than I would have got on the open market anywhere, which was surprising what Tavares did, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But he was in New York, so he was getting killed by U.S. standards. And then he goes to Toronto, but and there was a bigger thing at play there. He grew up as a Maple Leaf kid, and we all saw the picture of him in his little bed with his little Leaf pajamas on. But I wouldn't have signed him to that deal anyway. I just don't think he's that good. But I think he's a really good player, but I wouldn't go as far as they did.
Question from Eileen. She's been a fan of the Flyers since she was a little girl. Big Hextall fan. Did you like him better as a goalie or a GM?
Well, I liked him better as a goalie. He went to a Game 7 against the greatest team of all time.
He beat the shit out of people in the corner.
Yeah,
and got Conn Smythe.
What did he win as a GM? I mean, he did a great job building the team. I think resetting. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, he went out there, but what do I care about the Kings? I love Quick, but I mean, think about it. He was in his first term here. I mean, after Pelly died in '85, and then Hexie comes in that '86-'87 season. Oof. It was like when Pelly died, it shattered me. 85. I'm 12, 13 years old, November of '85, and I think it was the first time I kind of realized that people die and when they're not supposed to. And I was a puddle. I still have the article somewhere that Al Morganti wrote for the Inquirer way back then.
Yeah, I might too, believe it or not.
Yeah, I have them all saved and it shattered me. And as a goalie, I was a goalie already at that time. And then they bring in this guy Hextall, and he's banging the posts, and the strap on the helmet's undone before he wore a mask, and he was so braggadocious and crazy and electric in the way he played. And then he was so freaking good in those '87 playoffs.
Oh yeah,
and it was like, whoa, man! I mean, then all of a sudden, playing youth hockey, everybody was flying out of the net to play the puck, myself included. Got myself in trouble a lot that way. Yeah. But and then to score a goal, I mean, it's crazy. But yeah, he was a tremendous player to watch.
Just think if unfortunately Pelly didn't pass away, what would have come? I mean, Lindbergh was headed to be the next star. I think Lindbergh was going to be an awesome goalie, but you imagine what happens to Hextall if Lindbergh stays. Does Hextall end up going through the Myers, getting traded, getting picked up by somebody? Do we see him again? Who knows what happens? It's
He's probably never the general manager.
Yeah, exactly.
True. Hey, Jason, quick question for you. And I kind of want to jump into the prospects a little bit here, but I have to know right offhand, what's your favorite Flyers game ever?
As just my whole lifetime, or do you mean that I worked and covered? Or
nope. Say your favorite game you've ever watched.
I was lucky. My dad had season tickets through his business when I was growing up. So my mom used to drop me off at Ovations. My dad worked in Bala, and I would meet him at Ovations at 4:30, and I'd go to games. All of a sudden, Section R, Row 7 in the Spectrum. So I've been to a ton of games. I mean, some of the most memorable ones was in '85. The first game after Pelly died, they played the Oilers, and they won 5-3. Darren Jensen was the goalie.
Bob
Froze was hurt. Yeah, exactly. I could use that because Froze was hurt. And that was a tremendous game because of the emotion and everything that was in the building.
Yeah.
But probably, I mean, the greatest was Game 6 against Edmonton. I watched it on TV. My mom and dad were there. My mom came home with a splitting headache. She said it was just so loud. They just couldn't even comprehend how loud the building was. But working for the team, I mean, I've done every outdoor game, Winter Classics. I was at Fenway Park, taking a piss in the visitors' dugout. It's tiny, right? And I'm in there, and I'm leaning against the wall. I'm dressed up in a parka. I look like the kid in a Christmas Story because it was so cold at Fenway. And I'm leaning against the thing, and I just started thinking, I'm like, God, I wonder who's pissed in here. I'm like, Babe Ruth's pissed in this one and the one over there. All the legends, you know what I mean? It was oh, this is cool. And you walk out of the dugout, and you see, the Green Monster, and we're in here playing hockey, Yeah. Those were cool. That one was cool. The one in Pittsburgh was awful. Because it was just so cold, and I didn't have great accommodations for that one on the glass. But man, I guess Game 5 when they beat the Canadians to go to the Cup.
That was good.
I mean, Richards, the shift, everything about that series, and traveling with the team at the time in Laviolette, and like just the vibe around everything was just so crazy. And talking to Mr. Snyder after, who had a couple cocktails in him. It was like interviewing somebody on the Titanic, like kind of swinging back and forth. But that was pretty cool. There's been a lot of good ones. The 5 overtime game, which was 20 years ago on Monday.
Yeah.
I remember being at the bar that night, and they turned off the TVs at 2
Primo
o'clock.
I remember staying up for the game too.
My favorite was 04 against the Lightning, Eastern Conference Finals.
Game 6?
Game 6.
Yep.
Yeah, I just watched it the other day.
Primo and Gagne.
Yeah, I talked about that on my podcast. I go, the one thing about that game, like Primo was so good in those playoffs.
Right.
And they would have won the cup against Calgary, I believe, if they'd got to the finals there.
I agree.
But Gagne was really good in that series as well.
Mm-hmm.
He was a really good player. I don't think he gets the credit he deserves. He will eventually, though.
Oh, yeah.
Question, Jason.
I like-
Eileen, who is your favorite Flyer, past or present?
I think I know this one.
I
Who do
probably
you think it is, Mike?
I think it's Gagne. I think it's Giroux.
No, I got to go goalie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I would probably. Well, I mean Pelly, but it was just so short-lived. But
Bernie?
yeah, it was
Hexy.
Hexy. It was
Yeah.
Hexy. Yeah.
That's
I'm a little too young for Bernie. Like Bernie was winding it down as far as my memory bank goes. And I remember when he got hurt, and he got the stick in the eye and all that. And I love Bernie. I've gotten to know him a little bit, and he's just the funniest dude in the world.
It is.
Hilarious.
Like with that French accent. Hi, Jason. How are you? Like it's like he's so cool. Like he's the most interesting man in the world. When my boat is a rocking, don't come knocking.
So, Dave,
I just love him.
Yeah.
I have a good story for you. So
He used to come into WIP when I worked there all the time. I used to record commercials with him, and he couldn't read English. So I'd have to say it, and then he'd repeat it, and then I'd just edit me out. This is Bernie Perrant for Dr. Pistone. Hey, Doc, great save. One of those
I
commercials?
remember that.
The hair commercials?
I remember that, yeah.
Dr. Pistone saved my hair. He can save yours. He's awesome.
So
He's so fucking cool, man.
he is.
Love that guy.
He was actually a pallbearer for my uncle in his
There you
funeral.
go.
Nice.
Bernard Marcel Perrant's mask on the wall. It was signed, but it wiped off.
Looks like a Mike Richter mask back there.
Yeah, we got a Richter up there. We got a Nikolai Hobby Bulin Wall mask.
There you go.
Wall.
Patrick
I
Waugh,
hated Hobby Bowling. That's it.
Colorado.
Marty.
Yeah, Marty's phenomenal. Do you know who that Canadians one is?
Is that Ken Dryden?
Kane Dryden.
Oh,
That would be Jose Teodor.
Oh,
There you go.
Theodore.
I thought it looked a little different.
And a Van Beesbrook. And then you got... shit, hold on.
Wait, I can probably
Then you
figure it
got
out.
that beauty right there.
Oh, is it Hayward?
That's Jason Myrtetus there, brother.
There
Oh,
it
it's
is.
you?
It's got my nickname on the
I
chin.
went on break. Here you go.
nice.
What is that? Who painted that?
Weasel Graphics in Havertown.
Ah, yeah, he did this one
Weaselhead.
too. Yeah,
And I got the
yeah.
Iceman
Doug's a buddy of
bottom.
mine. He put this on the back. He's like, I'm like, dude, take that off the back of my mask.
I got the Italian flag and I got the American flag back there.
Yeah, look at
27
that.
ice, cool as ice. Remember the ice fans?
And
Yeah,
people,
Doug's a good guy, good artist.
people say you're
Yeah.
a hothead, Mike.
I am a hothead.
Nah.
This is not a loaded question. I'm not fishing for an answer. What team do you hate the most? As a lifelong Flyer guy.
See, this is a weird question for me. I actually get asked this a lot. Like, you hate the Penguins? And I'm like, no, I really don't.
I don't.
It's my kind of view on the league and everything has changed covering it. Because I could watch the Penguins play hockey every day. You know what I mean? Like I could watch Sidney Crosby play hockey every day. He's a great player. He plays the game the right way now. After the first couple of years when he was kind of a whiny bitch, but he's tremendous, right? So I don't really have hate for any team. When I was growing up, I hated the New York teams because I had cousins that lived on Long Island and they had that shit accent, and the Islanders were winning 4 straight cups, and the Rangers and Ron Greschner and Ron Duguay. So I hated those teams. Barry Beck, Billy Smith with the Islanders and all those teams. But now, I just love watching the game at any level, really. I mean, you'll find me at the ice line, the rink here in Westchester, watching like a 16U showcase. I'll go up there and watch that. I'll watch, obviously I coach my son who's a Bantam now. He's heading into year 2 of Bantam major. So, yeah, I mean, I like it all. So I just love the game, everything about it. I love the culture about it. I love what it does to the kids who play it. You see NHL players that they're never quick to pat themselves on the back. And I think that's just part of the game and the culture of it. Like, you never let anybody get too big, because even if you're the best player in the team, you're going to catch a lot of crap in the locker room if you do that kind of stuff. So if the sport polices itself. So there's everything about it that I still play it like a fool. But, I play it because I like getting out on the ice and getting a good sweat in and the competition. But I also play it because I still want to be in the room with the guys, hanging out with the boys is the best part about the game.
Anthony, you had a story for him?
We're kind of past that, but a couple things real quick. The one thing I really like about hockey is that you can go and you can watch, like for the Flyers example, you can go right down to the skate zone if you want. You can show your son, how they practice. I think that's one of the most underrated parts of hockey, to be honest.
It's really cool.
All the time. Mike and I, we go a lot. And we go check out practice. I think it's so underrated.
Yeah, you pick up a lot of cool things too, don't you?
Yeah, yes, you do.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, because you see how the best players, elite athletes, you watch, like we watch the Eagles games once a week, but we don't sit there and go to practice every day and know which guy at practice is like insane. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You hear about guys like to go like to the Jordan documentary, that he was a maniac, practiced like a maniac, and it's no wonder that he was so great, because he was so competitive. And then you go to practice, but you see who works really hard. You see the guys that are come off the ice last, and it's the same two every time. It's Konechny and Sanheim every time. Yep. Yeah, they're out there just shooting nonstop. And you can see things, then all of a sudden you see them in games. Things that you haven't seen yet. Like I was at a practice. I guess it was probably in early March or late February. And the goalies always go out first and work with Kim Dillaball, the Flyers goalie coach, and just go through some technical stuff, post integrations and different techniques to put in your arsenal. And when Elliot was in net working with Kim on the side, Carter Hart was there, and he was going through this kind of motion. I'm going, and he kept doing it, and I could see that the repetitive nature of it was there was a lot of technical ability to it. I'll call it a desperation save, where you kind of like fall forward and your legs are out. It's very Jonathan Quick, right?
Yes, yeah.
And I'm going like, what the hell is that? Because he kept doing it on each side, and he was repeating the exact same technique each time. And then I'm watching the game, and it was against the Rangers, and it was that save he made on Panarin on the back door, behind the back pass on that power play.
We talked about that, Brian.
And if you look at that save, it looks like an albatross. Like that's what it comes across as. You reload with your left leg, you push, boom, and you sprawl like that. And from him doing that in practice, that save was available to him, where maybe it wouldn't have been before.
That's crazy.
So you're always evolving. Like I thought that when I had Kim Dillaball on my podcast on Flyers Daily, I asked him about it. I forget what he called it. But I was like, you should call it the octopus. He goes, well, we'll put that under consideration. But like those little things are big. They're big things, working on those things. And I mean, those guys, they're such, like, if those guys don't have a practice or a morning skate on the day of a game, they're off. Like we play beer league once a week or 2 weeks, and we're like, I feel good tonight. Those guys get off, like it knocks them off their game like that, because the line is so fine because they're so good. I mean, like Mike, you see guys in beer league, you're like, man, that guy can play, right? And then you consider what like NHL players must be like. Holy, I mean, there's like retired guys that played pro.
At Hollydale, I played against Johnny Gaudreau's dad, Guy, before, and he had skate classes, and he was lights out. I mean, if you could stop him, that was pretty impressive, and he was really good.
Yeah. So, and we had guys that play in our league, played D1 at Penn State, guy like David Thompson, and really good. Jamie Lundmark plays there now, former Ranger. I'm sure you know who he is, Bry. I was 9th overall pick of the Rangers back in '99.
Not a good draft for them.
Nah, Brendel and Jamie didn't turn out well, but I mean, Jamie just retired like 2 years ago from playing pro in Austria and playing all over, played in the KHL a couple of years and played a bunch of years in the NHL for the Leafs, for Rangers, Calgary, Arizona Kings, bunch of teams. So, when you're playing against those guys, you're like, this guy's like 38, couldn't even, he's playing in the Austrian league 2 years ago, and you watch and you're like, oh my God, backhand sauce from his, his hash mark in the D zone all the way to the far blue line, and it's like on a wire. It's like, Jesus, these guys must be sick.
You look at the Metro right now, it feels like it's a division in transition. And what I mean by that is I think that the teams that we've known to be at the top of it are coming towards the end of their windows of contention in Washington and Pittsburgh. And it feels like there's a groundswell of teams coming up, the Flyers, the Rangers, and Carolina. Do you see it that way? And how do you view the future of this division from the Flyers' perspective? Who do you think the teams are to watch?
Well, I always, and Michael tests this, I always did go into the net and go, okay, Brian Burke once said, former general manager, that 80% of hockey is goaltending. Unless you don't have it, then it's 100%. Right? Yeah. This division is shaping up to be the best goaltended division in the history of divisions in hockey, if it all pans out. Now, I'm pretty confident a lot of it's going to pan out, and starting in Philadelphia with Carter Hart. He could end up being the top of the class in this division, which would be a huge feather in his cap, because like we saw, and Brian, you know this, what's going on in New York with Shesterkin and Georgiev. I think they'll end up probably moving on from Georgiev at some point, because Shesterkin's going to be a bell cow that plays 65 games, and I think Shesterkin is going to be incredible. Sorokin, who just signed with the Islanders, is another guy that maybe is, he was touted even higher than Shesterkin initially, and he's coming over. He's going to be great. You look in Washington and Samsonov.
Yep.
And I look at those teams and I go, okay, these are all teams on the come. They all got goaltending that's cheap right now, which is really good. I don't know that you can get away with paying goalies $10 million a year. Sorry, Florida. Because you can get young guys now that can contribute. So I think the division's going to be predicated on that. Plus, I love what the Rangers have done and their quick turnaround. If I was a Ranger fan, I'd be really excited, because Panarin's an MVP.
Going to explode over there, Jason. Jeez.
Well, I mean, good on him, though. Look, Panarin's a Hart Trophy candidate. Probably could win it. It may win it this year. But look at some of the other pieces. Like, I like Trouba. I like that signing. I obviously like Shesterkin. I like Georgiev. I think whatever they do with Hank is what they'll do with Hank. But the way they're turning, I mean, the young D-man there that they got, who's going to be a Calder finalist. And then you look, what's that?
Adam Fox.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's tremendous.
I love him.
But then you also look at Mika Zibanejad, and you re-sign Kreider. Dude, change your drawers.
Yeah, seriously, he's going to explode soon.
Dude, Zibanejad is off the charts good. Like, he's off the charts.
He's repeating things I've said to all of you. I just like it when he says it to me.
Well, I mean, look, I'm being honest. And I mean, look at the Devils, too. I don't know about Mackenzie Blackwood. We're talking about young goalies. But look at the young talent that they have. Jack Hughes, I think, is going to be a really good player. It's going to take a little time, because, he's one of those young guys. I mean, he don't even have hair under his pitch yet. I mean, he is a boy playing with the best players in the world that are men. I mean, it's going to take a little time. I mean, his brother's great already, Quinn Hughes, a little bit older, but still, they got good young talent there. I think that this division is a freaking beast. And if, I look at Columbus as a team that's going to fall off, because I don't know that they attract free agents, and I don't love that they paid both of those goalies. And I don't know that I like Korpisalo more than I like Merzlikins. Carolina's a team, I don't know who their goalie's going to be. So that's a question mark for me. And Carolina, I think it just ended up being Carolina again. And they're cheap.
Yeah.
Like, they don't want to pay guys. So, but they got a good coach in Brindamore. So.
Yeah.
In Pittsburgh, I don't like their goaltending situation either.
No, not at all. But let's dig into the prospects a little bit here. Where do you see a guy like Isaac Ratcliffe's future here? Because, I mean, maybe he's the guy after JVR. I don't know, but he's got a ton of talent, and they have a logjam right now, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting, because the league, one thing that they may end up doing, and pending how many games they're able to make up, if they get this regular season in and get this playoffs in, you got to see what the cap ramifications are going to be for the next 3 years.
Right.
Because they're not going to play with fans, so that's going to be a big revenue loss, right? So even if they do come back and capture the TV money and do all those things, then they'll mitigate the damage a little bit. But there could be compliance buyouts for teams. And, if they do that, first of all, they got to come up with a new CBA and have labor certainty for the next decade with a new TV deal coming in and another team coming in the league. But who could be a compliance buyout player for the Flyers? It's probably JVR. You open up a hole for a younger player with less salary and, you have Frost. So that's got to be a guy that's going to be on the roster next year, right? You also signed Tanner Lisinski. You also signed Wyatt Wiley. That's a defenseman, and you also signed Wade Allison. Now, why did those players just sign an ELC when they could have waited till August 15th and gone anywhere? Tells me the general manager saying, like, hey, man, you got a legit chance to be on this team.
Yeah.
A lot of times they come with promissory notes at that point. These are guys who played 4 years in college. Tanner, 4 years at Ohio State. And Wade Allison, 4 years at Western Michigan.
Yep.
It's like a 1 to 2 year thing for them to get to the league. So you're going to have to shed some bodies for sure. And Nicholas Aube-Kubel's a young guy that's kind of taken them by surprise a bit too.
Yeah, nowhere this year. Kind of.
And then the uncertainty of Oscar Lindblom.
Yeah, another one.
A little bit of uncertainty with Nolan Patrick as well. So there's a lot of things to consider.
That's true.
What about Sam Morin? Another injury.
Love the kid, man. He's such a good kid, and
just had injuries.
Just had him on Flyers Fix a couple weeks ago before the pause. We did an interview with him over at the Skate Zone, and look, there's a couple things in play. The injuries are horrible, but anybody that follows my critiques, and I don't know why they would, but I didn't think that he was a guy that was going to be in the league anyway. At the NHL level right now, the league's changed too much. We talked about it. So much speed and so much skill, and he was before the injuries a good straight line skater, fast. I just when I see a guy like Braden Point coming down on him, I just don't know that he's a guy that can turn the hips fast enough to be able to handle that speed on the outside. So those big bruising hulkish guys like him, I think they're really rare. There's not many Colton Paraychos. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, and I just don't know, with the injuries coupled with that there's going to be a future for him, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think they pegged him as the next, so to speak, Pronger, but
yeah, it looks like
that was never gonna.
Yeah, that was
materialized.
That sucked for him.
Do you think it hurts him that he wasn't a pick of this administration?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
I
You hear that a lot, I think more in other sports than hockey, but like if this group didn't pick you, like they're not married to you, so to speak.
Yeah, that's if you're a marginal player. If you're a guy that can help them, like they didn't pick Travis Konechny and they wanted to sign him real bad. Same with Provorov.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean there's a little bit of that because general managers have a vision for what they want their team to be, and they have a vision based on what they need for their team too. So there's such a huge group of defensemen prospects. I mean, even a guy like Mark Friedman, who's gotten a little bit of a taste and has looked real calm, real good. I was impressed with him. He doesn't wow you, but I was impressed that he didn't stick out in a negative way.
You went to Bowling Green, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
If and when they do come back, like, do you think there's a real chance that Patrick does see the ice? I mean, he's
It's a good question.
For weeks, before this was all going down.
Yeah, and he was ramping it up pretty good. Still wasn't cleared for contact. And I know when Chuck put out about 2.5, maybe 3 weeks ago, his update on the injured players, he put up the update on JVR, who was coming along, and Phil Myers, who's ready, and other guys, Nate Thompson. But nothing had changed essentially with Nolan. But I don't think that you can clear him for contact unless you have hands on. If you have, you can be with the kid and test him. So obviously, the longer this goes, I think the better chance there is for that. And if they do come back and they do finish out this 189 games of the regular season, 13 games left for the Flyers, and Nolan is cleared, that's a good thing. Because you're throwing him in, it's like a preseason for him to get acclimated into this season. No wear and tear whatsoever on him this whole year. He hasn't played a game since last April. So if he can get back in, get his hands back in order, and talking with Flyers development coach, a guy named Angelo Ricci, before the pause, I think it was actually the last game they played, March 10th, when I was speaking with him. because he works out with them every day, and said, man, he is skating great. His hands are great. Everything. It's just getting cleared. So if he can get cleared and get playing this year, boy, that'd be tremendous. I know a lot of people are like, oh, he's a bust. And you get rid of him. The figures Flyers screwed it up because Heiskanen was taken in that draft, or Elias Pettersson. But nobody was taking any of those guys at number 2, at the draft time. Like, you can say that in hindsight. I mean, he would have been the number 1 overall pick if he hadn't gone through.
Pants get wet. His pants get wet for Elias Pettersson too.
Yeah, great player.
Brian loves him.
Yeah, I mean that happens in every draft. And Tom Brady went 199.
Moist. Brian gets moist for Elias Pettersson.
I wish it was a Ranger. They tried to go get Cale McCarr and him. They couldn't trade up, and they ended up at Leah's.
Moist.
Yeah.
So
guys, favorite guys in the league. Svechnikov is his. I believe he's a Kane fan, so he's a touch of bias. If you look around the league right now, you mentioned it is a young man's game, and they're getting the deals a lot more quickly than they used to.
Wasn't Svechnikov the guy that got the shit kicked out of him by Ovechkin last year?
He was.
Oh, he got murdered. Murdered.
It's like, dude, think twice.
He was like.
Don't let the fact that Ovi scores 100 goals a year fool you into thinking that he ain't a freaking beast.
Yeah,
he's like Jeremiah Trotter on skates. Like, he's huge. Like, seeing him like in the hallway out of equipment, like he looks smaller in equipment to me. When you see it, because the way he skates, he's just so fluid and he's such a great player. When you see him in the hallway there, and you like his bottom half is like Trot's. Like, he's got a big old Jeremiah Trotter ass and huge quads, and he's just thick and with that, like Siberian accent. Like, I come to break you. Like, that's what it's like,
Never would I have ever thought somebody would walk the Stanley Cup through the casino floor of the MGM Grand. That was like just awesome. That was cool. Like, I can't even hate that.
He's a beauty.
He's awesome. See now, Ant and I have seen Wayne Simmons, and he looks huge on the ice, but his legs are like this. He looks like a stick.
Beanpole. He's got minute bowl stems.
Yeah. He is like the thinnest guy you've ever seen.
Yeah.
But on the ice, he looks like a monster.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that you see, like Lucic on the ice looks like a monster. He is a monster. Like, he's like a grizzly bear. Like, he's so thick. And then, like, I remember walking out. God, this must have been 2010. Walking out of the building one night when the Flyers were playing the Bruins up in Boston, and walking out behind Chara.
Chara's a monster.
Dude, like, it's scary.
See Chara out of path. He's a monster.
I'm only 5'7". This dude's 6'9", off skates. So he's like 6'11", almost 7 foot on skates. His stick is like a mile long. You know what I mean? It's like you had to hack down one of those redwoods out in California to make his twig. Yeah. And I'm going, and this guy can skate. Like, I think he could stand in the middle of the ice and touch each sideboard. That's how big he is. Like, it's crazy how big some of these guys are. But then on the other hand, it's crazy how small some of, like Gaudreau. I mean, he looks like a peewee.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But he floats on the ice. But to answer that guy's question, favorite young players in the league, outside of the Fly, like, I love Marner. I really do. I think he's tremendous. I really like the Tkachuk brothers. They're bastards.
Yeah.
But I think that there's a place for those kind of players in the game today, and I think they're good for it. So I like those guys a lot. I really like Cale McCarr a lot.
I love Cale McCarr.
I mean, you mentioned Pettersson. I love Pettersson. There's some other young goalies I like around the league. Like I like the guy out in Vancouver, Jacob Markstrom, a lot. So yeah, the game's in a good place. There's a lot of good young players. Yeah. I still love watching Doughty, even though he's not a young player. I could watch him play 38 minutes a night every night and not look like he's gassed at all. It's sick how good he is.
From the outside looking in, since I do root for a different team than the four of you do. You mentioned it before that their turnaround's been, pretty much a clinic. I mean, they have, they sent a letter out, they started chopping players off, and I think I really can't say I disagree with anything they've done over the past 2 years, outside of what I felt was a premature buyout on Kevin Chapter. What's your take on them? Like, I mean, how close are they?
Are the Rangers?
Yeah,
I think they're right on it. I think this year was a big year for them, for guys to step up to the next level, and how they handled the deadline this year. Jeff Gordon, the GM there, I think has done a really good job. I think he had a good coach, and David Quinn, who knows young players, and they're a young team now. You got Kako, I think is going to develop into a really good one. I mentioned Truba before, who I like a lot. He made the commitment to play in New York, so I think that they're going to be one of the elite teams in the Metro. I think the next phase of this thing, for when the Penguins, Jim Rutherford, the GM of the Penguins, it's amazing, man. He's like a guy that a bill collector can't get on the phone. Like you got like a bill collector or a credit card, and you're just avoiding paying it, and the interest just keeps going up and up and up and up. Like eventually the credit card bill comes due, and all these trades for first-round picks and trying to keep this window open for him eventually are going to kill that team. Yeah. When is that? When is Crosby going to fall off and Malkin and all that? I don't know. Could be in the I would say within 2 years, right? But that being said, the future of this thing is the Rangers, the Flyers, the Devils. I still wait to see on the Caps, because I think Ovechkin's just a machine, and I think that if they won the Cup this year and they started the season 4 weeks later, he'd still score 50 with like a .10 BAC. Like the guy, first of all, I think he'd have a .10 BAC still from the party and from winning the Cup. And he's just a freaking Russian machine. Like he doesn't slow down at all.
Does he challenge Gretzky's goals?
I think he eventually will break the goals thing.
That's what I said. I said he breaks it.
Wow.
3 years ago, I wouldn't have said that, but I mean the fact that he's still
goals a year.
Yeah, and he just keeps doing it. Then again, there's no signs of slowing down. The guy is an absolute monster. Like he's the greatest goal scorer of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I know he doesn't hold the most goals, but when you consider, adjusted goals because of the league now and goaltending. Think about the goals that he scores now with the goaltending now.
Right. He's not
Gretzky played those teams.
Yeah,
when Gretzky played, those teams didn't even have a goalie coach. Goalies were just trying to figure out what the hell to do to get hit. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Now, goaltending is a science. And these guys are so good. These goalies are so good. And the fact that Ovechkin stands there in that same spot, and you know exactly what he's going to do, and you still can't stop it.
Yep.
You still can't stop it. I mean, I'd love to see the number of goals he has scored from that spot on the one-timer. Yep. It's got to be 300.
So, Jason, when the Golden Knights came into the league, the way they had everything set up for them with the expansion draft and all that stuff, they pretty much had, and me and Brian talked about this on our show, they pretty much had to pick from an all-star team, and they put that team together, and they were unbelievable, and it showed because they went to the finals. Do you think that the league has kind of learned its lesson and kind of will tone it back a little this time when Seattle does it, or is Seattle going to get the same opportunity as Vegas did?
No, well, a couple things. One, I disagree with you, and two, I'll answer the second part first. When Seattle agreed to pay the freight to come into the league, the amount of money, the stipulation was they get the same exact thing that Vegas got. Mm-hmm. You can't give that to one team and then just 4 years later do it a different way. I think teams will be more. I think teams will handle the expansion draft far differently. I think George McPhee did a great job out there in the way he collected assets, but I didn't think he collected an all-star team. I didn't even think he had a first line, to be honest with you. I think he was a team full of second and third line, no first line and no fourth line. You know what I mean? And then they got galvanized with the cause, the shooting that happened.
Goaltending.
And you had that, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big part of the equation. So you had a team, too, that was galvanized as, hey, we're an expansion team. Nobody expects us to win shit. So there was no pressure from the get-go. They got off to a good start with a good coach in Gerard Gallant. And, it just became a thing where confidence just swelled. Yeah. They got on a heater. They've been a good team since. But eventually here, and probably starting in this offseason, and maybe with a flat or lowering cap, they're going to start to get themselves in trouble because now they have to start making decisions.
Yeah.
Now they have to start considering, did we pay somebody too much? How do we turn this over and take the next step? They got a good system to come into the league, and they capitalized on it by getting to a cup. But the sustainability there, to me, is a question, even though I love Mark Stone. But Fleury's up there. and they don't have a great plan and goal going forward beyond him. So there's a lot of factors in play there. But I think they were like a second and they had 4 lines of 2 second lines and 2 third lines, no top line and no fourth line. And William Karlsson was just out of his mind.
Yeah. Was that good? Was that good for an expansion team to get to the Cup Finals though?
It's an interesting question. I don't know that I can answer. I guess it was good because it exposed a new market to the excitement of the Stanley Cup playoffs in a huge way, and the way that Vegas embraced it with the show that they put on and everything, I think was good for the league.
It was cool, yeah.
And it was a cool story, right? But there's a lot of people, like a lot of hockey purists, that said, how ridiculous is it that an expansion team's playing for your my team. I've been dying with this team. Like Brian's been dying with the Rangers. They won 1 cup in 100 years in '94, and they haven't won shit since. The Flyers haven't won since, in 40 years now. Or 45 years, sorry. The math sucks. And all of a sudden this team comes in and they go to a cup. Like that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. But look, you got to credit the team. You got to tip the cap, a little stick tap to the team for the way they handled the expansion draft and the hiring of the right people and George McPhee and that staff that he put around him and Gerard Gallant, and then getting the most out of the players. Look, this league is crazy. Like that's why any team can win on any night pretty much, except for Detroit. Even though Detroit went 3-1 against the best team in the league this year, and 4-0 against Boston. The margin between the best team and the worst team is not as pronounced as you would think it is, or as pronounced as it looks in the standings.
To that point with Vegas, I think what you're going to see with Seattle is I think you're not going to see these teams do these don't take my player trades, where they give something else, they bribe to not. I think they learned their lesson with that. I think got ripped off more than Florida in that.
They got crushed.
It's got absolutely crushed. The point that I was going to make too, and I think this is what led Vegas to be able to make their run, is I really don't like the NHL playoff system. I don't think it is designed currently for the best teams to advance, because what you get in these second rounds is these nuclear war type series. Like you're going to see when we come back in the Atlantic, when it's going to be 2 of the 3, most likely Tampa, Toronto, and Boston, which, it feels like it's just, if you're a very good team, if you're a top team, if you have someone else in your division that's right behind you, you're going to play them in the second round. And if the other division is weaker, I go back to when the Rangers had that run they could have had, where you were better off being the wild card than you were to be in the 3 seed, because you get into an easier road. I think what happens is Vegas was the beneficiary because Winnipeg got to the conference finals and was just spent.
Oh, they were shot, yeah.
They had nothing left. The same thing with Tampa, although they had their opportunities. Against Washington, not saying anything against Washington, but Tampa was a very excellent team that year. They just fell off because, again, they had to go through nuclear war in round 2. Just your thoughts on the playoff system. Like, do you really think it's designed for – I think it's designed for the average team to have more of a shot.
Well, I don't like it. And I agree with you, because Gary Bettman, I thought this was a reach. They wanted to really kind of go with a bracket system to create some online buzz, if you will. Everybody fills out their brackets like you do with the NCAA tournament. And you wanted to have that fight out of your division to get beyond that. But what you did was you thinned the herd in a way that eliminated too many of the alluring matchups for a more even important series, like a conference final to go to a cup. Like you couldn't see Pittsburgh taking on Washington to go to the cup. So I would prefer that they just went through a 1 through 8 seed, 8 plays 1, 7 plays 2, 3 plays 6, and do that, and reseed after every round. I would prefer that. Like in 2010, that's what happened. The Flyers, as a 7 seed, had home ice advantage in the conference final because they were playing the 8 seed in Montreal. Now Montreal upset that great Capitals team with Halak and the goaltending in the first round, and the Flyers get through New Jersey and then to come back against Boston to get Montreal in the conference final, and they win it in 5. So I don't like this system. I know a lot of people are calling for playoff reform, but it seems like it's falling on really deaf ears, and Gary Bettman does not want to change it. I know there's some general managers that want to change it too. It's been talked about at general managers meetings and league meetings for a couple of years now. I just don't know that it's going to change.
Yeah. I think as this division gets better, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Atlantic team, and if some of these teams kind of fall off because they're in their contention now, they're going to have an easier road to get
Yeah.
conference finals. It's going to be nuclear war to get.
Yeah, look how good the Metro is. Like the Flyers at one point were 6th in the Metro and like 12th in the NHL.
Yeah.
I'm going, what? That's crazy.
Yeah.
So is that it for Jason, I guess? Or, man, we've been on for an hour and a half, Jason. We really appreciate you giving some time to us.
Yeah.
I guess we got a question for Savior.
Yeah, so the Kings are building a good young base. I think it can become great. I think they have the top system in the league. I'm jealous of it. And I'm a Rangers fan. I think mine's up there too. But yeah, they've done a real nice job accumulating talent, given the fact that their protein's cap hell, basically, with a lot of long-term deals to guys on the wrong side of 32.
Yeah, they there's going to be a little bit more pain, I think, for the Kings. But in a few years, 3 years, they could be one of those teams that's right back in the mix again. Like Chicago, I think, has been able to reload, and they could be back in the mix next year. They got some good young, Kubalik, and they got some good young players, and it's not like Kane's dropped off. I mean, he's still absolutely ridiculous. Mm-hmm. So I think that, where are they in with goaltenders, both those teams, Quick, who I absolutely love, one of my favorite players to ever watch, is on the wrong side. I mean, he's not going to be able to walk in 2 years the way he's played the game with those hips. But then, you look at a team like Chicago. Are they going to be another team too that can rebuild and get back into being one of those elite teams? And what's the tough Western Conference? How long is St. Louis going to be one of those contenders? Do they sign Pietrangelo? Where's Vegas going to be? San Jose spent all this money stupidly. I think they're really in the shitter. I don't know how they can get out. I think they just made they went against their DNA of their organization. They never signed guys to more than 3 or 4 year deals. Then all of a sudden they're handing out 7 and 8 year deals like they're like a Pez dispenser. Like, what are you doing? And then you give Erik Karlsson, who couldn't even walk, who was on crutches when he signed the contract. Right. You give him that kind of loot? What are you, stupid?
Yeah,
like that guy's never going to be healthy.
No.
Like I just don't, great player, insane talent, but I mean at this point in his career, and you're saddled with that contract for so long. Yeah, I mean, and then we talk. Remember, Mike, we're talking about environment for goalies.
Yeah.
Martin Jones was a guy that took him to a cup, was a pretty good goalie when they had some structure. Now all of a sudden, look at that team. I mean, Jesus, nobody can play goal there.
Yep.
Yeah, you would. That is a goalie nightmare to go play in that system. You're getting odd man rushes at the kazoo. I mean, you're just getting crushed. Cross ice passes nonstop. They'll kill goalies.
Yeah, they're not getting a lot of free agent goalies to go there.
Well, the other thing is too. You look at it and you go, okay, well, what does that do to a goalie? First, he's trying to adjust to make up for the system that's screwing him. So then he gets away from the technical foundation that he should have, and then it's cyclical. And now the goalie's ruined until he goes somewhere else.
Yeah.
They're in really bad shape.
Speaking of a goalie who was not helped by their environment, would be Henrik Lundqvist, who saved the most high danger shots of any goalie in the league for the better part of 15 years. Obviously,
by the way, this year too, till about like the 50 game mark, he was top 5 in the league in goals saved above average.
Yeah, I know.
He wasn't bad this year.
Yeah, I know. And the last game I went to, one of the last ones, was the game the Flyers lit him up in the first period because he hadn't played in a month. So that's, I guess, to be expected. What's your gut tell you about him? Is he going to go somewhere else? I think his time in New York, unfortunately, has come to an end, and I blame the team for not doing enough to give him something when they had a chance to win it in that 12 to 15 window. But obviously, Shesterkin's there, like you said. They have Georgiev. You have 2 goalies, not 3. Do you see him playing anywhere else? Do you think he hangs it up when he's on a team?
Boy, it's a great question. I don't know. I think he's still got something to give. I think he can go to the right place and help a team like Colorado. That'd be a place where I would look to sign him. Mm-hmm. There's a couple places that I think he could go to and have some success and make a run at it. But from all indications from the reporting that I see is that he doesn't want to leave New York. But you're right. You can't have 3 goalies. I mean, that's the worst situation for every one of those goalies. Mm-hmm. And when you got a guy like Shesterkin there and you're a team on the rise, let's go through some growing pains with him, because having Hank around doesn't do him many favors at all.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know what's going to happen. He's got 1 year left. I wonder if they do bring in a compliance buyout if he's not a guy that they could buy out.
Yeah.
But do you do that to a guy that you respect that much in Henrik Lundqvist? I don't know.
It's a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, but one they've created on their own, you know. So
I'm surprised they didn't trade Georgiev when they could have.
I wouldn't have traded him.
No, they still can, but that's going to be their 1-2 for their foreseeable future.
Probably.
I don't like that as a 1-2, but I don't like two young goalies. As you know what I mean. I need a veteran in there to help Shesterkin learn to be a pro, and I don't think young goalies having they play one game every 21 days. I don't think young goalies handle that real well. Goalies like Curtis McElhaney handles that really well, like in Carolina, right?
Yeah.
He play every 21 days and he go out and give you a great start. That's a hard thing to do for young goalies. I think it's the hardest job in sports to be a backup goalie because you never play.
Yeah.
And you get in there and a lot of times you get the game of the second of the home and home. You get the shit matchup on the road, on a back-to-back, your team's gassed, the other team's been waiting at home for you, and you're expected to perform. That's a hard job.
Yeah. So, Jason, I guess we're all done. We really appreciate you coming on for about an hour and 45 now and talking Flyers hockey with us and around the league. Like we talked about earlier before the show, it's been fun. It's been great. We hope we can get you back on the show again. Love to play with you if you ever need another goalie up where you guys play once this thing is all done. So that'd be pretty cool.
If we need another goalie, it's because I can't go. We don't split the games.
And don't worry, I won't skate the length and come after you. So I'm done in that. I'm done in that whole section of my life.
Not his.
Mike Velarde will tell you. I've been on some teams with him where I've gone a little ape shit, but I'm done that in my life.
He has done that.
So, I did that last year in the summertime, and I look, dude, we're going out there just to take a good sweat and have some fun, right?
Yep.
But like sometimes when you play in like the higher end leagues, like there's some of the guys are young and they think they're playing for the fucking cup or something, right?
Yeah.
I had this guy keep chopping me in a game. Like I covered and he chopped me, and I was just like, all right, man. I'm not saying anything. He was a young guy, like not that big of a deal. And then in the second period, I made a save, like kind of like this, hit off my chest, and I dropped it into my glove, and I closed it, and like the puck was in the air, so he was going to try and swat it, and he just drilled me in the hand. And it was like the fourth time, like halfway through this game. So he kind of brushes off after that and goes next to me, and I just went over and kind of like looked at him, and if he was like, my bad, I would have been like, cool, no problem. But he's like, F you. So I jabbed him, and then he just threw a haymaker. So I kind of like shrugged it. I'm like, what's going on? And as that's happened, I'm just dropping my stick. And I like never got in fights, right? I'm a goalie.
Right.
And he had like a mask on that was real loose around there because they're not trying to protect their face because we're in beer league. Mm-hmm. So I just waffle board went boom. And I caught that chin, and this dude just dropped like a sack of potatoes and knocked him out. I went and got a Live Barn subscription and got the video. I'm like, I got to see this. His brother came flying off the bench and came after me. The whole line brawl happened. It was great.
So quick, same kind of story. I'm in my hockey league that I was in. It's 12-1. And this isn't even my team. I'm subbing for somebody that night.
Are you winning or losing?
We're winning 12-1. There's like 2 minutes left in the game. Fight breaks out on the other end of the ice, and they're going at it or whatever. All of a sudden, the goalie sneaks over there. Well, the other goalie is like,
that's cool.
The other goalie is like 6'6", like Sean Burke. He's huge, and he gets into the fight, and I'm like, damn it! So I threw the gloves down. I skate like people were cheering. Yeah, but Jason, my whole mindset going down there was, I'm not throwing a punch. This guy will kill me. I just got to grab this guy to the ice.
Yeah, you just got to mute him.
I grabbed him from the back. He spun around, took a swing at me, and I just threw him to the ground like WWE wrestling and just got on top of him.
Just used his weight against him.
Dude, stop. So
yeah. It's like, dude, come on, we're in a freaking beer league here.
Exactly. Yeah, we all got to work the next day. I mean, I don't need to get beat up in a fight. So
yeah.
So Jason, tell everybody who's listening, if they don't, I know you're doing a podcast every day now for Flyers Daily, which is awesome. That's good stuff.
Yep.
Not exactly my cup of tea. It doesn't mean you don't do it very, very well, obviously. But tell everybody where they can find your stuff.
Yeah, we're actually doing it since the pause. We went to 3 days a week, so we're doing Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. When the season starts back up again, I'll go back to doing it daily. That's Flyers Daily. And you can find all the podcasts for the Flyers Broadcast Network on FlyersBroadcastNetwork.com. Also on their website, everything's right there as well. Apple, iTunes, all that stuff. And Flyers Fix is kind of on pause. I did an episode a couple weeks ago where we had Chuck Fletcher on. And but Flyers Daily, I just had Elaine Vigneault on the other day on Friday, and I've had all the players on, all the coaches on. Again, tomorrow's episode will be Robert Haig's going to be on. And then also on Friday, I'm taping an interview tomorrow with Ivan Provorov for his player profile episode coming up on Friday. So you can check that out. Stick to Hockey Podcast is one I've been doing for a couple of years as well. At Stick to Hockey Pod on Twitter, and that's on iTunes and all that stuff too. Some really cool episodes there. We just had Boosh on, and he was breaking out all his old masks, and we do video
Nice.
on that now too, which is cool. And just a couple episodes too. We had Craig Berube and Keith Jones on, and just telling
Okay, that
great
was
stories. Yeah, and Chief's just breaking Jonesy's balls the entire time.
Oh yeah.
It was just an absolute riot. So if you want to check those out, Stick to Hockey Pod is on Stick to Hockey Podcast is on YouTube as well.
Keith Jones story. This must have been, I was still working at ShopRite. So this was like 2005 maybe. And I'm standing there at the courtesy counter and I see this big guy walking right in front of me. I'm like, oh my God, that's Keith Jones. And Keith Jones is not a small human being. He is a big guy.
Yeah, he was bigger. He lost a couple pounds.
Yeah.
He looks like Noel Gallagher from Oasis.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that.
Jason, for myself, and I'm sure the Sports Box crew, we want to thank you again for giving us a lot of your time tonight, talking some hockey. Check out Jason Myrtetus on his Apple Podcast show. Phenomenal guy, hockey goalie, hockey guru. Thanks, Jason. We appreciate it.
Boys, anytime.
Thanks, guy.
I've enjoyed this a lot, and I just love flying the flag for the sport. And I know everybody agrees. Let's get this thing back on the ice. Let's get some games underway. Let's get some playoff. Like, I'm dying without NHL playoffs right now. It's been tough not having sports for 55 days or whatever it is, but hopefully it'll be back soon. Everybody stay healthy, stay safe, and best to you and everybody's families.
You as well. Thanks, Jason.
Too.
Thanks a lot. We appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
That was awesome.
That was great.
I had a great time talking to him, and it's cool because he has that perspective of the inside of the team, and he just loves the game, and like you respect that because that's so cool. Like there's people that do jobs that like they just do jobs, and you can tell like he loves the game and he loves the team. I don't like his team, but I can respect his love for his team. That's fantastic. So
and he knows the ins and outs, the prospect. He knows everything about everybody. It's great.
It's awesome. So. That was really cool, and he's the best goalie. He is the best goalie we've had on the show, and that includes you. Just so you know.
I haven't seen him play yet, so that's still undetermined.
I'll give the benefit of the doubt, but yeah, that was a lot of fun. Hey, real quick, 10,000 followers this week.
It's good.
Very nice. We're moving up in the world. Yep.
I want to thank everybody for following our Facebook page.
Talking about moving the needle. So
that was a really, really, really cool thing.
So you guys got a show on Thursday coming up.
Yeah. So me and Hess are joining up with Drew and Tim from All Everything Entertainment. That we've been doing some kind of helping each other back and forth for a little while, written some stuff for their website. They're cool guys. And it's now that we have this great platform, it's really cool to be able to talk to other people, bring guys on. Hopefully we do something with our friends over at JDF Sports in the coming weeks too, but it's just a lot of fun. And we appreciate everybody who's, watching with us. And I just want to give a quick shout out to Crowd Play. And I mentioned at the beginning of the show, it's really, really cool app. I mean, especially, it was a lot of fun before the pause of all sports, but it's actually kind of cool now because you get to watch, virtual games. I mean, as of on Thursday night, it's the Cowboys and the Patriots. I don't know if that's the Brady Patriots or the non-Brady Patriots, but we're going to see the Cowboys and their anemic quarterback go up against the New England Patriots. And you're able to, play trivia, guess the plays, guess the outcome, and you can win prizes and cash just from doing it. So, it's really cool that we're hooked up with them. Check them on Apple App Store, Google App Market. And if you use our promo code TheBox, when you sign up, you get 10 free points. We want to give you a leg up on the competition. So definitely check them out. A lot of cool stuff there.
And speaking of, we're going to take this question first before we get out of here. So,
well, I didn't watch a Korean baseball game.
No.
I was sleeping. Did anybody watch Korean baseball game? I know Caleb watched it.
I didn't watch much.
No, and you know what? If I see highlights on it and it looks kind of interesting. I'm not really a baseball guy. I'm like, that would probably be more your cup of tea.
I saw some highlights. I saw a couple home runs. Yeah. I saw a bat flip this morning. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, it would be kind of hard to follow him in the game because you really don't know anybody, and you're just watching the sport to watch the sport. I mean, like I said, Mike would be more of a guy for baseball for me, but I wouldn't get up that early to watch it. If it was golf, I definitely would get up to watch like the British Open and stuff like that. I always do that, but no, I wouldn't get up that early to watch it.
Yeah, I did.
What's both your takes on Andy Dalton to Dallas?
I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense in the sense of the whole Dak situation. If they don't, something happens next year and they don't. I mean, this is his last year, correct? He's got one more year in his deal, and next year is the big payoff.
You better hope he starts this year.
Dak was franchised, but he didn't sign the tender yet.
He didn't sign the tender yet.
Right.
Wait a minute. I should hope that who plays this year?
No. I'm saying that the Cowboys better if he doesn't sign that tender, he doesn't have to play this year, right?
Okay.
No. I'm saying
I guess
technically he doesn't have to play this year, right?
It's a possible backup plan from Dak if things go wrong. I think that's what the intention was, moving him in there. And listen, he's a veteran guy. I mean, Andy Dalton's what, maybe 33? He's right around 33. I mean, he's not young, but he's not over the hill. I mean, he could still play a little bit. I think
he's never had those kind of weapons either.
No, and you're going to see what he's going to do. I think it's a good move for Dallas. I mean, why not? I don't,
QB1, I'd start him.
You hate Dak. You just hate Dak so bad, it's unbelievable.
Andy Dalton's in real well.
Not to pay him that much money.
Yeah.
No,
true. He is asking for a lot of money. But what, Mike? Wouldn't you? And then start down. I mean,
it's real simple. Like, you're not going to hold us hostage. We have an option. We have another option. So deal with it.
I mean, he's not going to ask for 26 and get 32. He's going to start high, then drop down if he needs to. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I think it's a good move for Dallas.
Yeah.
Speaking of Brady, Tuesday night, we will have another guest on the Sports Box. We will have Ian Beckles, Tampa Bay Buccaneer, former player back in the 80s, to talk Buccaneer football. He will talk NFL. We've had him on the show before back in the day with me and Brian. So it'll be cool. Get another perspective from a guy who played.
Next Tuesday or next Thursday? You've kind of told me both.
Tuesday. It'll be next Tuesday.
Okay.
Correct. It'll be next Tuesday.
So keep an eye out for that. Mr. Velarde, anything to end the show with?
Yeah, my baby's crying.
All right.
Time to go.
Guys, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you on Thursday with our crossover with AEE, and check us out with Ian Beckles next week. Thanks for watching the Sports Box.
Thanks, guys. See you.
Hey, guys.